The most important job in the world may also be the one we talk about the least, but we're going to fix that today because we're going to have a conversation about caregiving with experts who have devoted their lives to the topic. Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions Publishing, where we are helping the world experience what's possible. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the amazing authors of one of our newest books. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of it right now. The Caregiver's Advocate. This is volume 3. I can't believe it. This is volume 3 in an award-winning series by our lead author, Debbie Compton. A quick shout out to our cover designer, Davide De Angelis. We love collaborating with our designers. He did a awesome number with that purple, right? I try to match my book covers. This is a little light, I think. I need a little darker purple, but I have a huge shout out to Debbie. We would not be here without you. Your mission and vision for this book and the series was absolutely ginormous. And I'm just so grateful to be on this journey with you. You have gathered around you a stellar group of expert authors to talk about a big topic. And y'all are about to hear and feel that because I've got some pretty cool people in my Zoom room right now. Beth Meek is a certified holistic nutrition expert and health coach who helps midlife women, caregivers, renew their energy and rebuild their health while caring for others. Esther Kane is with us. She's a retired occupational therapist and founder of seniorsafetyadvice.com and aginginplacedirectory.com, offering practical safety guidance for older adults and their families. Kathleen Gordon is here. She's a retired licensed clinical social worker with over 40 years in the field, who now works as a court-appointed investigator for guardianship and conservatorship cases in Southern Arizona. I'm slowing down on some of those words. You guys are such badasses. I'm so happy to have all of you here to talk about this today. Beth, we're going to start the party with you today. Give us a little bit of the why behind the chapter you wrote for the Caregiver's Advocate.
All right. Thank you, Laura. And nice to see you other ladies and welcome whoever's listening. I am Beth Meek and I wrote chapter 7 of this awesome book called Nourishment for the Exhausted Caregiver, Eating for Self-Care and Energy Renewal. And as a nutrition and health coach, as Laura mentioned, I have helped women for years nourish their bodies, but that was one thing that I found the most difficult during my first season of caregiving. So it was at that time that I discovered how easy it is to forget something so basic as how we eat can be actually a source of self-care and taking care of ourselves. So when I wrote this chapter, it was all to help caregivers change their mind and view eating differently, not as something they had to do and not as something that was constantly slipping off their priority list, but as a simple form of self-care and a reminder that they matter too, because in the caregiving equation, caring for yourself is part of that. It's not part of the problem, it's part of the solution.
I mean, don't you think nourishment is probably top of the list in terms of, helping yourself help other people? And if we aren't eating or aren't eating properly, or in another interview, we talked about it, like somebody said, I just forgot to eat. The stress, right? What else do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, the statistics are staggering as far as caregiving and what caregiving does to the caregiver as far as their health. And so if we're not taking care of our health as a caregiver, it's caregiving is not sustainable and your loved one is going to suffer. If we think about the fact that our loved one is being cared for because we're healthy enough to do so, then yes, nourishment is one of the top things we can do to make that continuing sustainable.
Oh, I hope you guys rewind and listen to that again because that was so important. Your person is thriving because you are thriving. and it just doesn't go in the other direction. Okay, so if you were going to give us the baby step for this, for nourishing ourselves, we're running around a million miles an hour doing 50 million things. We're trying to take care of this other person. We're forgetting to eat. What's that little baby step thing you want to help us with?
Well, the first thing I say is it's mindset. We have to understand the importance of taking care of yourself is not separate from taking care of your loved one. But next, it's making sure that you have the quick snacks that you need, whether it's the apples or the grapes or the nuts and seeds or things like that, those healthy pieces of nourishment, rather than just grabbing for the chocolate bar or the bag of chips at the hospital. There's a bit of preparation, but it doesn't take much as long as it's a priority and you see it as such.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. Thank you so much for saying yes to this project, for being here today. And how did you know that the chocolate is over here or not? It's dark chocolate, so it's good for you, right? Okay. Yeah. This is such an important piece of this. And thank you for kicking this off so brilliantly. Esther, I'm going to roll over to you. Tell us a little bit of the why behind your chapter.
Sure. First, I want to say, Beth, thank you so much. That information is so valid. The oxygen mask has got to go on you first before you can do anything. So thank you. I love that. My chapter is on simple tools that make eating easier for seniors. And the why is really because as an occupational therapist, I saw so many families overly concerned about my mom isn't eating anymore, my dad isn't eating anymore. There's something wrong, there's something wrong. And they weren't looking at the right thing that was causing them not to eat. It's not that the parent didn't want to eat. It's not that they couldn't, it's not that they were depressed or the medication, or I mean, it could be any of those things. But the thing that most families I saw did not look at, did I say that right? That most families didn't look at were the tools. Maybe they couldn't hold the spoon well enough, or they were embarrassed about having to have their food cut for them, or because of tremors, they couldn't hold the cup very well, or it could be so many different um, issues involved in that act of not eating. So by taking a look at the tools, and what I wanted to do in my chapter was talk about some of the tools and then some of the ways that families can integrate those tools without it looking like, it's an adaptive tool. Including it as part of what is just always at the dinner table or breakfast or whatever. Basically making it a tool. I always like to say you can't make a smoothie without a blender because the blender is a tool. So everything that we use, if we look at it as a tool instead of an adaptive piece of equipment, it just makes sense. Our phones are tools, our TV, our screens are tools. There's so many tools that we use every day. If you can look at it that way. And then the other why was also because I saw so many family caregivers take over. And if the parent couldn't feed themselves or were having trouble feeding themselves, instead of adapting to a tool, the daughter would just automatically just start feeding mom and dad. And that can be very degrading, very emotionally humiliating. So you want to try and stop that. Or they were in a hurry, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, stuffing the food in them. And of course, that's not good at all. But those issues that I saw as an occupational therapist over and over and over again really cemented in me the idea that one, you have to be patient with this person. It's not that they don't want to, it's just that for whatever reason, they're unable to. So let's look at that. I mean, it could be other factors, but the easiest thing to fix is the adaptive tool, is the product that they can use to feed themselves, and then to have the space around them to give them the time to feed themselves, to do what they need to do. That's the other issue as well, is time. But
Oh
that's
my
the
gosh.
why.
there are so many different amazing tools, and even just to talk about other kinds of things, you think maybe the tool is some shortcut, or it's some, I don't know, something that makes you look weak or whatever. But an example is somebody was just bringing me a modified computer mouse the other day, and it really was just to reposition the hand in a
Right.
particular way to like prevent wrist pain or whatever. And I'm a retired physical therapist, so I'm right on board with you, Esther. Like, all of these tools are so great, and
I know.
it go right. I know, it's like, come on, people, get excited about this.
I know, but the perception, obviously it's emotional. It can be financial, if you don't have the funds to purchase them, although, eating tools are not that expensive, but still, it's this perception that we have of, oh no, I don't need that. I don't need that. I'm good. I'm good. But if you can change that perception within the environment, the home environment, then I think that it helps that person to be as independent as possible. Because isn't that the game? To be as independent as possible for as long as possible. So that's what all this great equipment, and these days we're so fortunate to have so many products available for us that were not available, decades ago. So
Yeah,
yeah, so I definitely
100%.
wanted to talk about that because I think eating is obviously very important, but I saw so many times that families just didn't quite know what to do with it. So if they can't assess it, if they don't feel comfortable assessing it, then obviously get an occupational therapist, get a therapist in there to help you to assess what the situation may be and to try a few things and see what works for your aging parent.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you also for saying yes to this and for being here today.
Sure.
So, Kathleen, tell us a little bit of your why.
Thanks, Laura. And thank you, Beth and Esther. I really enjoyed listening to what you had to say about the tools and the nourishment. I am Kathleen Plummer Gordon, and I wrote chapter 5, which is the guardianship process, subtitle, Maybe I Need to Check on My Parents. And I thought, oh my gosh, all my years of working with families, it's, so many times there's an adult child who is taking care of their elderly parent. And I ask them things like, well, how are they doing? How are you checking on them? Oh, yeah, I call them once a week. They're fine. They tell me they're fine. They're okay. They're driving. And I'm thinking, whoa, don't tell me. The things, it's like a little bit here, a little bit there. And what I'm finding is there's so many times when really good, loving, well-intentioned people are really missing the boat. And that is when that whole guardianship process, that question comes up. There's a fear. They don't want to infringe on their parents' rights. They don't want to make them feel bad, or they're really worried this is emotional pull in this relationship. And so they don't do anything sometimes, and they just are so afraid. And so, really, my why in here is wanting to reframe that whole guardianship and fear into reframing it to protecting. What's the best way that we can protect our elderly loved ones? And really, that is the role of the guardian, is to protect an elderly person who can't take care of themselves. And sometimes people will say, well, but then they're not going to really be able to choose where they live, or they're not going to be able to make those decisions. And sometimes I would challenge them and say, are they doing that right now? Are they making good decisions right now? And if the answer is, well, and it's kind of like you can see it in them, their body language and everything. And they're like, they know the answer, but they don't want to face it. And so it's kind of giving them some help in making that decision. And, you know, Laura, we hear so many times like, oh, getting old is not for sissies. Guardianship, conservatorship isn't for sissies either. You've got to be able to make some tough decisions sometimes. And you got to have some backbone. You're going to be in a situation where you're going to be part of that team making decisions about the medical care. And maybe your elderly loved one has said, don't ever give me medicine. I'm just not going to deal with that. The medical team and you get together and say, we're going to try this. And you know it's the best. You're protecting them, even though they can't do it. So it's reframing that thinking into how can I protect my loved one? What's the best way that I can do that rather than, oh, I just can't take away their independence from them.
What a
So
tough subject for both sides. And if your loved one is, especially, I think if it's a parent, but I don't even know that it really matters. Like, how do you get past the, um, no, you're not, how do you even get into that discussion, Kathleen? Like, for someone who's resisting it, like, who are you to tell me that you're going to be my guardian? Like, I can just hear it now. Like, how do you enter
yes.
into that in a productive way?
Well, it is a challenge because many families will have discussions about who's my power of attorney. And that's always a good thing for all adults to have because if anybody's in a situation where they can't make decisions, if it's a sudden thing, somebody's had a car accident, somebody's had a heart attack, whatever, you end up in the hospital, can't make decisions, you've got somebody, they've got your back, and you know it's going to be somebody who's going to make the decisions that you would want. But the guardianship process, it is a legal process, and that is a decision that is made by a judge. And so having that, starting that, sometimes the person who's petitioning doesn't even have that discussion with their loved one. They know that placing that petition to file that petition is the right thing to do. And there's going to be an attorney appointed to what we call the protected person. There's going to be a medical evaluation and there's going to be an investigation. And all of those things are done, this whole process, because it's really the job of the court there to say, we've done our part. We want to make sure that this frail elderly person is protected. We don't want to take away what they deserve. Our job, we want to make sure they're well protected. And so they try to
Yeah.
cover all their bases in there.
And that's good to know, like to understand what this process is and all the things. Oh my gosh. Okay. So thank you also. Thanks for raising your hand to offer your beautiful work in this book to all three of you. I have such gratitude. I really challenged you to put a vulnerable story into your chapter, and you all did that so brilliantly. But you're all master teachers. And so when people come into this second section of the chapter, you're giving them a practical experience. You're helping them with information that they're going to need to know if they're in any of these kinds of situations. And it's you all help people every day, but it's another thing to get it in black and white in a book in a way that that reader, gets the takeaway of it. So thank you for doing that. This book is an incredible resource, not to mention the robust resource section in the back of the book. So I could go on and on about this book is just a gift for people. And I'm so grateful to all of you for just pouring your heart and souls onto those pages. Esther, I'm going to start with you for this next question. Caregiving, and we've already touched on this a tiny bit already, but it can lead to burnout. Many times it leads to burnout. And I know you all have experiences, either personal or with helping others in it. What's a simple step that our listener can take today if they are right in that burnout level? What's a little thing you want to share with them?
I think the number one tip that I give to family caregivers is to get respite care, to get some type, whether you pay for it whether you get a neighbor, a friend, whatever, whether it's an hour a week, an hour a day, something to break the schedule, to get out of that so that you can replenish yourself one way or the other. If you go to another room and read a book or go to the movies or lunch with the girl, whatever it is, there has to be some kind of respite to get away from that. And not only the burnout, but the isolation that can also come with family caregiving, especially in rural areas. It's very common in that type of environment. But I think respite care and I think establishing boundaries, around what you can do and what you cannot do is so important. Not only boundaries with the aging parent, but also boundaries with yourself of what you are, allowing yourself to give. Because, as Beth was mentioning, in most or alluding to, most caregivers give, 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 give without replenishing themselves. And that automatically leads to burnout. But that burnout can also lead to physical and mental decay. I've seen so many family caregivers that when the aging parent has passed away, now the caregiver has cancer or some other horrible disease, or, they, develop all these ailments, and it takes them years if they recover at all. Why? Because they've let themselves just get to the point where the body, the mind is just depleted. And that doesn't do anybody any good, especially if the caregiver has a family of their own. It just doesn't do anybody any good. So I think respite care, and it's so important to be in touch with other caregivers, support groups. And nowadays you can do that online. It doesn't have to be a physical contact, although if it is, that's even better. But if you can't, then there's so many online support groups where you can hear what others are doing and you can see, talk about what others are doing and share your own stories and get help that way.
Yeah.
Just talk, get that out there so that you can get the help that you need. But that's what I think is the number one thing that most family caregivers don't do, especially at the beginning. Those first 30 days, most family caregivers are thrown into it, right? They don't plan, oh, August 25th, I'm going to become a family caregiver. No, it's because mom fell or dad had a stroke or whatever. They're thrust into it, and, humans tend to react instead, they're reactive, not proactive. So they, not only are you now dealing with all the medical issues and therapy issues and legal issues, but it's the whole thing is wrapped up in emotion. And nobody makes good decisions when they're emotional.
Thank you, Esther. Yes.
Esther, oh, I just wanted to say something. Esther, I think that all of those things you said about respite are wonderful. And I think we really need to, in my social work brain here, reframe that respite is not a luxury, it's a
No,
necessity.
it is. You're right. You're
It's part
absolutely
of the
right.
caregiving
It
because of
is.
everything you said. Yeah.
It is. And some families, especially women, women tend to give a lot, and it's usually the daughters that end up being the primary caregiver. But, it's so important to feed yourself before you can feed that, person that you're caring for. But we're just so enmeshed in, I have to take care of them. I have to take care of them. They took care of me and I have to take care of them. And it doesn't help when you look on social media and you see all these other family caregivers that look like they're having an amazing time and things are going
Mhm.
great. And why can't I do that? How come I'm not doing that? I'm failing. I'm not doing that. But that's not true because obviously that's a snapshot, a 1 second snapshot of that entire day. Whereas, yeah, you just have to just turn that off. Just go away. Don't even go there. Turn it off and then realize what you can do and what you cannot do, and get that respite care, whatever it is, friends, neighbors, a combination of everything. But it requires boundaries, it requires planning. And most people just don't plan to become caregivers, of course. But I don't know, maybe with the boomers, that population growing, maybe that'll change. And hopefully
So,
this will help them.
yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So thank you for that. We're talking about burnout. Kathleen, you were next up on this one anyway. You piped in already. So what do you want to add? I think Esther covered that entire question just now,
Sorry.
but no, you're good. I mean, you covered so many important parts of it, but each of you talks about this slightly differently. So, Kathleen, someone's listening and they are in the burnout. One simple step you want them to take today. What's one thing they can do?
I would say one thing, one little step they could do is find out. And the way that I'm going to find out about getting help is I'm going to start picking up the phone and I'm going to call. I'm going to call an elder law attorney. I'm going to call a home health agency. I'm going to call my neighbor. I'm going to call a family. And I'm going to start calling and start telling a few people that I'm at the point where I could use a little bit of help. And I know it's really, really hard for some caregivers, but just to start asking, like, hey, would you mind? Could you come and sit with my mom for maybe an hour? And that's just a little baby step. And 1 hour out of 24 might seem like nothing, but and you can stretch it to 2, 3, etc. Yeah, it is a change. It's a new stage of life for the one who's being cared for, and it's a new stage for the caregiver. It changes everything. Those family dynamics are changing, like it or not. It's like this is how life is. Okay, how can I take this and what's the best way for all of us to get through this? And we know there's people out there who can help. Let me find them.
Right. And both of you were saying it earlier. Esther, you had mentioned many times this is not something we signed up for. It got thrust upon us. And all of a sudden we have to take on a role where we might have absolutely no clue how to go there. But we have to do it fast.
Right.
And that, wow, just imagining the stress of that. Something that made me so sad, you were saying, often the loved one finally passes and the caregiver now has a disease because they aren't taking care of themselves. So like, you guys really think of burnout like this. I hope you're listening and you go make the call, like Kathleen was saying. Um, just one phone call, and you're actually giving other people a gift to be able to give to you.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lovely thing to be able to receive help, isn't it? A lot of the times we just don't reach out. So Kathleen, I love that. I think making that one quick call could change everything.
I think
um
actually most people want to help. They just don't
mm,
know how to help. So by
correct.
giving them the instructions, can you
Mhm.
come sit with my mom for an hour? Can you bring me a meal on Wednesday? Whatever it is, tell them exactly what it is that you need or want. Most people do want to help.
It's helpful to give people specific instructions. It definitely is like, yes, I can do that, like that,
Yes,
and it's just easy. You're just making it easy for them, right?
of course.
Beth, it's hard to go last on these questions, but I know you have a way that you want to add to this. Somebody's in the burnout. What do you want them to know?
Well, first of all, you guys nailed it on the head. The other thing I would add to that is caregivers need to be specific, but so do those people offering help. If you're offering
Mm,
help, don't say, give me a call if you need me, because that
mm,
that puts the ball in the caregiver's lap. Say, I could bring lasagna Wednesday night. Would that work for you? Or what night works best? That's another piece of advice I offer. But back to the burnout, I had some time to think, and you guys covered it in a great way. But one of the things I do a little differently, I think, than other people who help caregivers is I meet her where she's at. Support groups are great,
Mhm.
coaching is great, and I do coaching as well, and I lead a support group. But what if I need immediate help right this moment? What I'm burned out right now, or it's 3 a.m. in the morning and my support group isn't happening until next week. I meet the caregiver in the moment. So what I would recommend is take find those 5 minutes in your caregiver day. And it's different for everybody. It might be 5 minutes before bedtime. It might be 5 minutes before your mom wakes up in the morning. It might be 5 minutes while you're waiting for the coffee to brew. 5 minutes somewhere. We all have those bits of time that we forget about, and take that 5 minutes for you, whether it's sitting down, whether it's closing your eyes, whether it's picking up a book for 5 minutes. I do an exercise called that it's marrying your to-do list with your free time. And we all have free time. And it's finding those moments of free time that you do have. And then what are some of those to-do things that you want to do? I'm getting off the burnout, sorry. The burnout, though, if you take those 5 minutes to help yourself, that's going to help that burnout. It might be taking 5 minutes to make that call, like Kathleen suggested, but if it's just 5 minutes to sit in, the more we become aware of those little bits of time in our day, the more times we find those little bits of time. And then we start a snowball rolling. That's what I would have to say. I also have some tools that the girls, caregivers could use in those moments at 3 a.m. in the morning, videos, audios, PDFs, things that she can use when she needs them most.
Fantastic, Beth. And now I would like to give all of you a chance to talk about that work that you're giving in the book, the tools you're teaching, give you a chance to kind of tell everyone what that most important thing you want them to know is, right? Kathleen, what's the most important thing you want our listeners to know, to understand about that guardianship process?
I think what I would like the readers to know, listeners to know, is that guardianship is something to think about as protecting. And going through that process, what do I have to, what is the signs? What are the symptoms? What's out there that might make me think my parent or my elderly loved one might need a guardian? If they're not able to make decisions for themselves, they can't take care of themselves, and they're not in a situation where they've got enough going on, the support that's needed, or maybe they have support people, but mentally, physically, it's just not happening. You know that they are not able to take care of their daily activities. They don't have the capacity. You need to start that process. And there's a filing process. And there are folks to guide you through that. There are elder law attorneys, and there are folks at the court. There's mentioning in the resource section, state by state, where folks can go if they are interested in that. And it's a process. It is not something that happens right away. You might feel like you're in a crisis, and sometimes there are those rare ones where they do have an emergency guardianship. But I will tell you, even an emergency guardianship, it's not going to happen today, and probably not tomorrow. It might happen in a week. So guardianship can take several weeks, and it's a learning process. And so decisions are going to have to be made. And I would really encourage people to seek guidance along the way. And all those aspects where the guardian will need to make decisions about where my loved one is going to live, or the medical care, even getting into finances. It may be separate in some states where you have a separate conservatorship. What's going to happen with all this? What's going to happen with, oh my gosh, my mom's lived in this house and she's got all this stuff, and what do I do? And there's a lot. And so I just really want to encourage people to seek the help and know that there are people out there for almost every aspect of the caregiving, of the guardianship process, from the medical care to the legal care, the financial, physical, hands-on support, caregiving, you name it. There are good people out there that want to help.
For sure. Many of them in this book. Thank you for that. That was a mini education in that topic today. Thank you for what you do and for sharing it. Beth, what's the most important thing you want us to know about nourishment for that exhausted caregiver?
Whoa, it's hard to sum it up, but I think the most important thing to remember is that nourishment is one of the simplest ways you can care for yourself. It is the basic essential to life. It is essential to your loved one's life. It is essential to yours as well. And that care for yourself is part of the caregiving equation solution, not part of the problem, not something to be left for whenever you have free time. It needs to be a priority.
Thank you, Beth. Yes, this self-care topic. We could be here for another 3 hours, couldn't we? We
Yeah.
need, right. This is such a big piece of what all of you are helping people with in all of your different ways, which is so important, crucial, necessary. Yeah. Esther, what's the most important thing you want our listeners to understand about making it easier for our seniors to eat?
Yes, I want to piggyback on what Kathleen had said. It is so important to look for the help that is out there. They are out there. Um, I think when it comes to the topic of eating, it it changes, of course, depending on the diagnosis, on the environment, the situation, that the family, everything that is in there. Especially, if someone had a stroke, you're going to approach it one way. If someone had dementia, you're going to approach it another way. If someone has Parkinson's, you approach it another way. And it's impossible to put it all in one capsule, of course, because we're all different. But I encourage the family caregivers to talk to their physician to get a prescription for occupational therapy to come in and help assess the situation. But more importantly, to look for an OT who specializes in that particular thing. I specialized in head injury, head trauma. Those were my specialties in the geriatric field. So I'm very familiar with everything from Alzheimer's, dementia, head injury, anything neurological. But I don't have experience in orthopedic injuries or, spinal injuries. So, but you want to get the therapist, not just any OT, you want to get the person that has that experience because it's different with each one, just like specialists. So, yeah, I very much encourage families to reach out. There are so many people out there who can help you. They just are not necessarily very good at marketing themselves. They don't all have websites. They are not all on Facebook or LinkedIn or anywhere else. So definitely look for them, get as many referrals as possible, talk to friends and family, and see who they've been using if they have. If you're in that age group, you most likely have other families who are also caring for their aging parents as well. You never know. Who knows who?
Esther, Beth, Kathleen, thank you so much for what you do in the world. Thank you for being here today. You're all so brilliant with so much wisdom and experience to share today. Thank you for that. You guys, to our listeners, this is way more than a book. This is a very generous community who can answer the questions you might have, carry on the conversations from today. Maybe, you need the support. So if you come on down into the show notes, I have everybody hooked up with their links, websites, different places. Go connect, explore what they're up to. There's so many amazing things that you all are offering for support. And of course, we hope you go grab your copy of this beautiful book. I've got the link down below for that too. And lastly, today, everyone, remember your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave.
Thank
See you
you.
next
Thank you
time,
so
everyone.
much.